Hey, Dan the Dentist here. I was wanting to make a series of videos on taking a case for a digital wax up from kind of start to finish. So I have a case here. This data is straight out of a Primescan. You can tell it's a little bit dirty. I can probably start to clean this up now. I don't necessarily have to, considering I have pretty good record of the teeth for the most part. I'm doing a wax up of 7, 8, 9, and 10. This patient had just had orthodontics. You can tell that I actually requested the orthodontist leave some spaces so that we can give these laterals a little bit better of a ratio compared to the centrals, which are obviously proportionately bigger. So let's start by just kind of cleaning this up a little bit. I'm gonna make some selections around these areas that are just pieces of data that are just gonna get in my way. So I'm using a select tool, selecting this area, and I just hit B actually, which is a smooth tool, and enter, and it kind of makes your selection a little bit more smooth. And hit delete. So you can go manually and do this in the software too. So like this excess of data I don't really need in here, that vestibule. You can see how broken up the selection is with the kind of the choppy selection as it picks up different triangles. But up here there's a option to smooth those boundaries. Here we go, right here, smooth boundary, or the shortcut is B. So I'm just used to hitting B and then enter, and then delete. And I just start removing all this excess data I don't like. Here, I'm going to unselect my opposing here. My opposing doesn't really need to be cleaned up because I'm obviously not doing any wax ups there. Let's select that. I want to have some posterior teeth because there's a chance I'll probably make a model print, and I'd like to have some positive stops on the posterior teeth, so I'm gonna remove some of the data I probably don't really need kind of through here. I don't really like leaving these sharp corners, so oftentimes we'll try to transition these a little bit better. If you're used to CEREC, you might be familiar with kind of the way I'm doing this in terms of giving it a starting point, kind of way out in space here, and I'm kind of curving it around and curving it back and then back this way, and this is telling the computer that all this area in here is going to be the selected side as opposed to the other side of that. Oops, did I do that? I'm hitting Control Z right here, and you can tell that I've selected some areas that I really didn't want. I couldn't tell from this angle, but from this angle now you can tell. Don't like that. So I'm gonna try again, but now I'm gonna come in. I might have to manually select a little bit of this, which is just kind of choosing a size and coming in here. Let's see if that'll smooth. Good. And my palette, I don't need all that palette. That's just going to be wasted resin when I eventually come to 3D print things, so let's delete all that out. Don't care too much for this area either. Don't care for these sharp ends, but now I'm just getting nitpicky. That's not going to make a big difference. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. So I'm going to export this upper model. I'm actually just selecting the same file I imported from, but I'm just going to say mod for modified. We'll save that, and so these are now the files that I'm going to use to import into the Blueskyplan software. So usually for this type of case, I just import straight into the crown and bridge. Actually, you know what? Let's go back. I'm going to import it into the model editing. Tell it I'm importing models. I'm going to find my files here. And the lower, I hit Control and clicked the second one I wanted. Hit OK. The Primescan already set the alignment, so it's going to ask for alignment here. I'm going to go ahead and hit skip, and which is kind of a bummer. I found that the grid that's built in doesn't necessarily always coincide, but I guess it's not too bad in this case. You know, obviously I like for the midline to be chosen a little bit better, but you know, I think the Primescan software is automatically going to select some of this, and you can go in and manually select that, but you know, whatever you end up determining on the Primescan Serac program is how it's going to export the models. So it won't be a really big deal for the way at least I do things, but regardless, you know, I always like to make sure that I have, you know, good contacts. You know, you can just look through the bottom side. You can tell that my contacts are pretty good on the posterior. This patient was accurately recorded in MIP. And so there's one more piece of data I actually need here. I am trying to do veneers in this case. As you can tell from the backside, you know, there's a lot of enamel that I don't have to prepare necessarily, and it's intact, and there shouldn't be much need for that unless I were to start bringing in the interproximal areas and the contacts, where I might have to get around the mesial and the distal a little bit more heavily than a conventional veneer prep, but the direct palatal side, I don't feel like I'm going to have to touch that. But I want to have preps. I don't want to just create veneers on top of these as they currently sit, because based on kind of how large I see these centrals and maybe even some remnant positions of these laterals, I don't want these veneers to stick out too much beyond the teeth. So I actually do want to create a prep. So how I do that is I am going to select and create a face group, which will allow me to kind of isolate these teeth I'm working on. And I'm going to do a kind of a shortcut option here. Under Edit, I'm going to hit Generate Face Groups, and there's a certain threshold that you can adjust, and this is just selecting everything. Let's see what 5 looks like. It looks like it's still, well, that's actually not too bad. Yeah, so you can tell that when I double-clicked this tooth, it selected almost everything else, which I don't like, so I might have to make... I'm hitting Control-Z right now. Let's try 4. It looks like that probably gave... I'm going to accept this, and I'm going to select the teeth I want. Check the lingual side. Yeah, it looks like it's selecting through there. It's giving a different group to the incisal ledges here. A trick that I learned... Oh, there's got to select that too. A trick that I learned from... I can't remember if it's Baron Grutter or Dr. Baron Grutter or Dr. Corey Glenn, but you can hold down Shift and hit the greater than button, and you kind of keep track how many times you've hit that. So I'm holding Shift and the greater than, and I'm going to count how many times I'm doing this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Why not? Now I'm going to go backwards 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And that covered up a lot of those little excess areas, although I still see an area up here. I might just go in and manually select that. I'm also noticing that it's selected some of these interproximal areas that I do not want. So I think instead of doing it that method, I may just come in and manually select them. So I'm Control Zing out of all these areas, and I'm just going to come in here and manually select it. That way it's leaving these papilla untouched. I'm really checking for any remnants of areas, like right in here. I don't want anything left over if possible. Otherwise it won't let me smooth the boundaries properly. There's a spot there. I'm going to shrink this down. I'm going to come in and select in this area a little bit. Alright, I'm going to hit my smooth tool, B, and hit enter. And now it's going to give these two center teeth the same selection. So I select those together. I want to separate those two out as opposed to that one and that one, which are really all by themselves. And obviously the Primescan can pick up on the extremely small area of contact between these two. So I think probably the easiest thing to do here is actually to hold down Shift and deselect one of these teeth. I'm riding just right along, trying to split this contact in half if I can. Alright, now I'm going to do my smooth tool again, hit enter. And every time you do that, it creates a face group. So now I have all the teeth kind of individualized. So what I like to do, actually, you know what, in these cases it's a veneer. I've actually just prepared these as if they're going to be crowns. And I'm not doing crowns, so I actually have to make a small further modification to these. I want to deselect the areas I don't feel like I'm going to be. Ooh, you know what? There are some unselected areas here. So I'm going to have to reset this face group. I'm going to hit the smooth tool again. Whoops, I deleted that out of habit. But if I just smooth it, that should be better. I wonder if I did that over here. Doesn't look like it. So that's just an area that I missed. Anyway, so when I select this tooth, like I said, I'm not going to be really prepping the lingual, so I'm just kind of salvaging some of this area. So really just trying to mimic my veneer prep, which is probably a little bit, I'm keeping selected areas that are probably a little bit more aggressive than I will actually be. So it won't make a big difference. I'm really just trying to make this for a temporary. So again, I'm going to smooth this, and now when I have kind of like my veneer selected area. So same thing here. It's probably easier to just deselect. All right, so I have different face groups for the actual parts of the enamel I'm going to prep. Now it's fairly simple. I'm going to reselect the part I'm going to prep. I'm going to come up to deform and transform. Also, you could hit T, and you're going to see these X, Y, and Z axis with this a white box right in the middle. I'm going to hit that white box, and I'm going to go down. And you can tell my tooth is kind of shrinking in size here. And you can kind of see a kind of a veneer prep happening. You Usually I find that I'm gonna hit Control Z here just so you can kind of see the difference. I'm more aggressive in my preps on the incisal edge. So you know what? I'm gonna hit something different here. I'm gonna hit over here. You see an L and a W. L stands for local, W stands for world, meaning that the software in local is trying to determine what basically kind of what the long axis of the tooth is. But I think that I'm going to be better off hitting the W here, which is giving me an axis in relation to this grid that you see. So I'm going to be able to do the same thing. I'm going to be able to shrink this down, but I'm going to intrude this prep a little bit to give myself more of that incisal edge clearance. It also kind of flattens out this landing area here for like what would be kind of like a prep, which admittingly is way too aggressive, most likely in this case. But there's also like this weird piece that's kind of sticking out, and that's probably an inaccuracy of junk on the tooth or something. And I don't want my wax up to be having this part kind of burn through that. Probably also going to bring it back just a little bit. I'm grabbing this triangle right here because I don't want to go backwards in this direction or in that direction. But this triangle right here lets me kind of grab it and bodily move it back. And that looks pretty good to me. You know, one thing that I might want to do actually is I'm going to reverse all this. I am going to cancel that, and I'm going to make a copy of this. I'm going to go over here. There's a button down here for duplicate. I want to have a duplicate to compare to. In fact, we're going to make the preps on the duplicate. So really quickly, do this again. T for transform, W for world. Shrink that down. Bring it up. Bring it in. Good. Man, I'm just going to do this quickly on the other teeth. That long axis looks pretty good to me. So I'm just keeping it on local, I guess. Alright, so those are my preps. You're going to notice that I'm left with this contact area in between. In this particular case, this is actually going to be pretty simple. And actually the reason why this is simple is because of where we started. Because my Primescan software was able to isolate this little hole here, it leaves for an easy area to clean up. If that area were filled in, if the contact were touching the gum tissue, this would be a little bit more challenging to clean up. But because that hole was there, I get to just select this area and that area, double click them, and just hit delete. And since these preps are just rough anyway, and I have these little holes here, I am going to go to my analysis tool in my inspector, and you're going to see these little spheres here which are recognizing those holes. I'm just going to click them, and they're going to fill in. And it's not too terribly important for those to be accurate. So now I have kind of like this pseudo prep of teeth that kind of work from. So I'm going to export this too. This is going to be my upper model prep. And now we're going to go back to Blueskyplan, and now I want to import this model. So up here, import STL, and which one's my prep? That's my prep. Again, it'll probably ask for alignment. I do not want alignment. I want everything in relation to one another as it already is. And actually, I'm going to open up the module for crown and bridge, and you'll see that I can almost visualize. I'm going to turn transparent my real teeth. Let's turn that off. So you can kind of see, you know, if I were to replicate his existing teeth, kind of that space I have. And you can kind of tell now why I brought those incisal ledges down manually, because that original white box shrinking is just not enough to get those incisal ledges down. And usually there's just undercuts still built into the sides of the teeth, the mesial and distal. So yeah, you can kind of see transparently kind of through where those preps are gonna be roughly. But even more important than that is making sure I have plenty of clearance when I put my digital wax up in here. So I'm going to wrap this up for now and come back later, and we're going to start the actual wax up.